Welcome back to Point of View, where we show you all sides of a story and we get your voice in our broadcast. This week, North Dakota's Republican State Treasurer Kelly Schmidt announced that she's running for a third term. And tonight, host Chris Berg from AM 1100 The Flag's Chris Berg Show asks her some of the questions you want to know about North Dakota's money.
Good evening. Inside in the Hot Box, she's seeking a third term as North Dakota State Treasurer Kelly Schmidt. Kelly, thanks for being here this evening.
Thanks for having me.
I want to jump right into the conversation. Everyone calls into my radio show. I go travel across the state of North Dakota, and there's this idea that the state's got a bunch of just cash sitting in the coffers collecting dust. True or false?
That is false. There is no cash sitting anywhere collecting dust.
But I keep hearing the number, $1 billion, $5 billion. Clearly there's a surplus somewhere. Where is that surplus at?
Well, let's first define what's a surplus. You know, you and I, when we set our own budgets up, we set short-term and long-term savings. Some would say that the $325 million that we have in the Budget Stabilization Fund would be a surplus, whereas others would say it's long-term savings. And what that fund does is...
But long-term savings for who? For the state, I presume, correct?
For the budget. If we started seeing a decrease in our state revenues that offset our budget by a dollar amount that we need to recoup those earnings or recoup that revenue, we would be taking that from our savings account called the Budget Stabilization Fund.
And I think a lot of people can appreciate that because you never know what's going to happen with fracking. I talked to a gentleman today from Williston, and even when Merck Santorum was in Tioga, that was the big piece of conversation, was this uncertainty. But on the other side of the coin, and again, you being a conservative, I think a lot of people are going to say, wait a second, that $325 million is ultimately my money, our money. Let's see some of that back in our pockets.
Well, and I agree, it's the people's money. But let's also have the conversation where we have to plan for the worst and hope for the best. You know, North Dakota's on a pretty good track record. We've been very fortunate with how things are moving along. And as treasurer, I can tell you there isn't a treasurer in this country that doesn't sit and feel very thankful and grateful for where we are. It's been an amazing ride for North Dakota. But it can all change, and it can change very quickly. We are at a defining moment. The decisions that we make moving forward from now in the next few years are going to define our future. How we move with our revenues, how we work with oil and gas, how we adjust to the flood issues that we're seeing across our state, Devil's Lake, Fargo issues, and now most recently the tragedy and the terrible things that have happened up in Minot. The thankful things we have to continue to look at is because we have planned and we haven't been quick to spend. We've had the dollars available to offset those challenges.
I think some people may challenge the idea of being quick to spend or not. We've seen, obviously, the North Dakota budget's increased dramatically over the last 10 years. But you talk about being at a turning point. There's a couple things I want to hit on. I think one of the things that a lot of people across the state are talking about is Measure 2. That could be a turning point as well in the context of what's happening in the state. Where are you at with Measure 2? And from what you see in the coffers, a good thing or a bad thing, and why?
Well, I absolutely believe Measure 2 could really turn the apple cart for the state of North Dakota. I'm going to be cautious because it is a measure and it's been brought forth by the people. And the people will decide how they want to move forward with this. I can tell you, I believe that we will see a shift in our revenue. The legislature will have to come in and they will have to make a determination of how we are going to distribute and maintain the expenses that need to happen at the local level. I do believe we are going to have to somehow bring in additional revenue, whether that's from sales tax or whether it's from income tax. The legislature will have to make that decision. It will be some trying, turbulent times for a while, should this pass.
And I know you have to walk a fine line here with your position, but Measure 2, would you say a good thing or a bad thing? How would you define it if you can?
I'm going to be cautious again,
right,
but
I
you know
respect
what?
That.
The thing is, we can continue to live inside our box, and North Dakota has never lived inside our box. We have a state mill and elevator, and we have a state-owned bank. Now, if Measure 2 does pass, I know that our legislature and our state government will be ready to call and to enact the will of the people. And I, for one, will be more than willing and will be ready. We are already in my office laying out, should this pass, what are the first questions that we need to ask without spending a bunch of revenue in our office because it may not pass. But we have to be responsible in moving forward as the people make the decision.
A couple of important points when you talk about turning points for our state would be obviously the oil extraction tax, as well as the pension, specifically with the teachers. So when we come back, we're going to talk about those two things specifically. And I got an important question for you when we come back to the Hot Box. Stay close. Good evening. Welcome back to the Hot Box. I'm here with North Dakota State Treasurer Kelly Schmidt, seeking a third term. I want to get back to this oil extraction tax. I know there's a couple of them, but the one that I want to have you talk about is this. There's one where the money goes right to the state pretty quickly, and it seems like some of the more municipalities, the townships, tend to be left out in the cold. For example, Montreal County, I think it was in 2011, generated like 60% of the revenue there and ended up getting only about 10% of that money back. Now, people here in the eastern part of the state aren't going to want to hear me say this because we get a nice sort of property tax reduction because of that. But yet these people are out in the cold with their roads and the townships and the political subdivisions. So what gives in that formula?
Well, the oil extraction, oil production tax is a very challenging distribution to understand. And it's been ebbed and flowed through the last couple of legislative sessions. So we get to different levels with different sessions.
And as part of that, people say it might be done purposely to sort of leave us, the constituents of North Dakota, in the dark.
And I would disagree with that. I think a lot of folks, I agree that there is a lack of understanding, but I don't think that anything is done to make it complicated for people that don't understand. And I'm hoping that as you and I can work together a little bit more, we can bring some light onto that subject and help people truly understand where their money is going and how it is being used.
Do you think it needs to be changed? I guess bottom line is, does more money need to be going to the local areas rather than to the state coffers?
Well, right now, the way it's set up, it's distributed based on tiers. So as a municipality or a county gets so much money, then it goes into the general fund, then it goes into the infrastructure fund, and it's a whole tier of dollars that move through. I would argue that maybe we don't need to change it right now, and I have no authority to change that. That would be a legislative change. But we have implemented a lot of grant programs that go out to Western North Dakota. As a member of the Land Board, we have approved several millions of dollars going out to the western part of the state in emergency services, in county, city, township challenges that they're facing, trying to deal with the ever-changing world of Western North Dakota. And I would just say that we need to allow those dollars to really make a change. And I don't think we've been given that opportunity.
Last question for you. Public pensions, are they in trouble here in the state of North Dakota, or are they doing okay in your opinion?
Well, let's define trouble. I mean, everyone knows that pensions are a hot topic in North Dakota right now. Everyone knows that not only are they in North Dakota, but they are across the country. We talk about unfunded liabilities, and what that really is if the pension fund were to close tomorrow, it would take X number of dollars to pay off those benefits until all those people are no longer alive. We made some dramatic changes, or the legislature did. Myself as a board member and many of the other board members, we worked with all the user groups to come up with some ideas and some solutions to take forward to the legislative process. They enacted those changes, and now once again we need to allow a little time to see how those changes are going to evolve to help us offset the challenges.
So you think they're going to be at least better in the future because of the past changes in the past session?
I do.
Okay. Kelly Schmidt, people want to find out more about you. How can they do that?
KellySchmidt.com.
KellySchmidt.com. Thank you very much. Running for a third term as North Dakota State Treasurer. Here's my question for you tonight. We hear all this information about all the money is going into the coffers and the perception that that money is sitting there collecting dust. In your opinion, should we become like Alaska and start cutting checks to the people of North Dakota from all this oil money? Or is it a good thing that they've got this budget stabilization fund, for example, to protect the state just in case fracking comes along or whatever may dry up some of these oil funds? I want to hear from you. Cut us checks or protect the state? I always kind of like money in my bank account. Stephanie?